What does it actually take to build a sustainable life in the arts? Not just creatively, but practically. Welcome back to I Love Your Stories. I'm your host, Hava Gurevich. And today I'm joined by artist, curator, and writer Lindsay Peyton for a wide-ranging conversation about creative evolution, reinvention, and what it really takes to build a lasting life in the arts. Lindsay shares her journey from a creatively rich childhood through photojournalism, painting, curating, and returning to graduate school later in life, and how storytelling has remained the connective thread throughout her work. Join us as we dive into the reality of maintaining an art career, the often invisible business and promotion work behind getting art seen, and how creativity moves across disciplines, including writing, exhibitions, and new tools like AI. If you're an artist thinking beyond the studio about longevity, strategy, and staying creatively alive, this conversation is for you. Lindsay, welcome to this episode. Now, quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the show. When I started selling my art, I had absolutely no idea how to actually turn it into a business, a professional business. And then I came across art storefronts, and that was a game changer. I've been a customer now for years, and they've been instrumental every step of the way of helping me succeed. I have a gorgeous, powerful commerce website. I have marketing tools and a membership to a community that is very supportive and teaches me how to succeed as an artist. Check them out, artstorefronts.com, and tell them Hala sent you. Um, Welcome back. And I'm really excited. My guest today is Lindsay Peyton. And Lindsay is an artist. You paint primarily, but I think you also do installation type art. Lindsay has also done journalism, and she is the director of a traveling exhibitions company called Art to Art. Um, and so we'll talk about that as well. Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Let's start. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, like what you studied, how you got into all the things you got yourself into?
Okay, great. Yeah, so, thinking about that question because you get asked that a lot, like, "How did you get into art?" And I think for me, it kinda goes way back. I had this really creative kind of childhood where, like, we didn't have a lot of toys, but we had, like, big buckets of crayons and clay, and we were always, like, writing a play or doing something creative. My grandmother was an artist, and so she taught me how to, like, draw a face proportionally when I was, like, 10 years old. And then my mom signed me up for a drawing class when I was, like, 6, but I feel like when I was in high school, that's when I really, like, had this kind of, like, falling in love experience, with painting. I had this really amazing art teacher, and we had a very unique kind of, class style where our teachers weren't actually art teachers, they were art professionals, and they were, like, doing an atelier style teaching, so she would be, like, painting at her easel in the middle of our classroom, and we would get to see her, like, work through a painting. And so that was just it was, like, the coolest thing, and I just really took a lot away from that. And then it was my senior year of high school, we had this new guy come in, and his name is Bob Mosier, and he's one of the best, like, art teachers that I've ever experienced through college too, but he built a darkroom my very last year of high school, and, I was just I asked if I could take the class, and my principal was like, "No, you can't because you already have a full schedule," and I was like, "Well, can I audit the class?" And so I took photography kind of, like, on the sly, and I was already, like, madly in love with painting and, like, would skip classes to go, like, clean my paintbrushes, but, then you get into the darkroom, and it's also this super magical experience where you're seeing, like, images kind of come up to the top of the paper in the dark, and the water is trickling. It's just this really cool experience, so, I kind of was doing both, and then went to college to pursue photojournalism because I was like, "Well, I might as well keep pushing forward with this." And so that's kind of where writing and photography, and I was still painting, at home when I could, um, kind of came together. And then I went back to school later and to my grad school later when I was, like, turning 40, and took painting. So I finally kind of closed the chapter on that education component. But I had been painting and doing kind of art adjacent work all that time. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, sorry if
A
I was
lot of questions. No, I just, I'm trying very hard not to like jump in. It's
yeah.
thoughts. One of the things that and you answered it before I could even ask the question, like, it really sounded that you came from an artistic family, and one that really encouraged your creativity, early on, and that's just kind of amazing. That's you're so lucky that you had that. And it's twofold in my opinion. One of them is just that you had the tools. So you were provided, like you said, most of your toys were like things that encouraged creativity. And that in itself, and all kids are artists. All kids want to scribble, and it's just like our first type, a form of communication. But also, it sounds like you had a lot of positive role models, starting with your grandmother and then your teachers in high school. And so you just have this like foundation of like both having role models to look up to, but also all the resources to find your own voice. That's
Yeah, I'm really grateful for it, and I do feel like, you kind of look back on some of those people that you've met throughout your life and who've kind of shaped you, and it's like if they hadn't I mean, like, if that teacher hadn't come my last year of high school and decided to build a dark room and, like, a closet, like, I would have never gotten, into photography and, like, no.
so tell me about photojournalism. How did that chapter in your life unfold?
Yeah, well, as I know you love photojournalism and photography too, so and I'm sure you also have, like, darkroom experiences. But, but yeah, like, I think that for me, the magic was really, like, the darkroom, and I think I could have easily gone into, like, fine art photography, but I thought that wasn't very practical, so it was, like, the journalism was kind of, like, second to me to that. I did end up doing some photojournalism for a while, but for me, like, art has always been the kinda, like, um,
Anchor.
central focus, you know? Like, when I was in photography, I felt like it was honing my eye
Mm.
for my painting later. And also, like, I'm a big believer that art shouldn't just come from your studio and like your other artist friends. I think that art should come from life. And that's one thing I really value about journalism is it's kind of a career that like forces you to go out and like meet people and learn about subjects that, maybe you have a beat, like I had a beat of medicine that I didn't know anything about. And all of a sudden I'm learning all these things and then you end up bringing that back into your art.
Yeah.
And so, like, I really appreciate that about artists who are kind of drawing from life.
Photography feels like it has inherently has that storytelling component, um, and since, creative writing is something that you gravitated towards anyway, like writing, storytelling, it feels like it was a good match. What made you go back to grad school?
Well, so, it was kinda so when I graduated, from Photo J, like, and it was a very intense program, and, like, we started with, like, 500 students in our class, and then we whittled it down, so when I graduated, it was maybe 10. And it was
Wow.
yeah, it was really intense. And so, like, I just felt like I was trying to survive in that, and when I got out, I was like, "Whew, I did not wanna do that at all." Like, that was crazy, really intense. So I graduated and I started, like, a construction company with my parents. We did stained concrete floors for maybe 5 years, and then I wanted to get back into art, so I started, teaching art after school, and I was an assistant to an art department at a high school, so I kind of helped I I ran the full darkroom there. I helped with, like, their screen printing lab. I helped with the painting teachers and the sculpture teachers, and that was really fun, but I didn't have the ability to, like, move forward and teach. That's when I was, like, at that school, I started curating too because they had 4 galleries, and I had to keep the walls, managed or hung or whatever at all times with student work. And I really fell in love with curating. So then I started curating independently, like around Houston, which is my hometown. And I also like ran a gallery for a year that was painting and sculpture and photography.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I know I'm like all over the place. But again, like I realized that, I really loved curating, I loved teaching, but I did not have the paper, right? So like
Mm.
I had kind of all that time thought, well, maybe I can get back to school or it doesn't seem practical. And I just was constantly debating about it. And finally, I was talking to my mom and she said, like, if you want to do it, you should just do it. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe in a couple of years. She's like, no, now. So, thanks to mom for that advice.
Sure.
Yeah, so I finally just, at the time I was the editor at a newspaper in Seattle, and I had to kind of, sadly leave because I loved that paper, and, go to grad school in Washington State. But it really was kind of like just a leap of, like, faith and trying to do something that I knew I wanted to do, but that I had
Mm.
kind of written off as something that I wasn't going to be able to do, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, curator, gallery owner, journalist, painter, photographer, a lot of hats. Um, what are you most passionate about right now?
I mean, it's just the root of painting. Painting was like I said, it's like a fell in love with experience, and I just, like, still feel that way about it. It's what I love to do. I paint every day.
Mhm.
And it's the root of, it's like I love curating, but I'm always gonna go home and wanna, like, go to my easel, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah. Tell me about curating. What is it about like, I mean, we can describe it. There's like a definition what curating means, but what does it mean to you, curating, and what is it about curating that appeals to you?
Yeah, I think, it was interesting because when I first started doing it at the high school, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of like a whole new creative process," because you're kind of seeing, like, what goes next to another painting or kind of, like, seeing common thoughts or common aesthetics and piecing things together, but then, translating that to a professional artist and, like, really pulling in work that was exciting to you, and also, like, um, that enabled you to go to artist studios and meet them and see what they were working on, what was exciting about that, and start pulling that together. That was really exciting.
I'm wondering if you have any like a particular story or two about that process that that were meaningful for you.
Yeah, like, for example, there was a nonprofit in Houston called Space Taker, and they opened a gallery, in their space, and I was able to curate their inaugural show in that space, which was, like, a pretty big honor for me. And I had met, some different women artists, so I brought in 3 different artists who were looking at the body. And it was so cool because, like, one was one of my really good friends, but, like, 2, I was meeting and getting to see their work, and then kind of bringing the 3 women together and seeing them kind of start vibing with each other and dreaming up what they wanted their show to look like. It was just a really cool experience, and it's just creative, and it's community, and it's just, like, supporting other artists and kind of shining a light on something that you care about.
In that sense, it is a very creative process.
Exactly, yeah, like, I was like, "You're painting, but it's, you're painting."
Yes.
Which is, it's funny because it's kind of like installation in a way too, it's like you're creating an environment, but it's more collaborative.
And it never like I never really thought about it that way, but to some degree, the curator is kind of like the link between the artist and the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I think of it, and it's really fun if you can do it in that way.
And so now you are working with exhibitions as well. Um, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about this kind of niche um, service that museums all use. Pretty much every museum uses traveling exhibitions to some degree. But being an artist who's, from the outside, nobody really knows about it unless you've been part of it. So let's talk about that for a minute. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it is that you do, and what does traveling exhibitions mean?
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you say 'cause I think it is kind of, like, not something that you would realize. I didn't realize it until I was in the field, but, I work for Art to Art, which is a traveling exhibitions company that's focused on photography, and we rent shows to museums, all over the country, and this is such a great service because basically it's like a ready-made show that comes in a box and
And you get to work with some interesting people, aside from the museum people, there's also like organizations like Magnum Photos.
and Magnum Photos is amazing, and then just meeting, like, really interesting artists and
I personally felt like I learned a lot from being part of that world. And me personally, I've also worked in retail galleries and seeing how different that is, that something that might resonate with collectors might not necessarily resonate with museums because they have different needs. Um, I think overall, it adds to the idea that art in general is very subjective. So, with all of the different things that you've done, all the different paths and where you are right now, how would you personally define success for yourself? And how has it evolved over time?
yeah, that's a great question. I think for me right now, like, success means, like, having time to paint, and I'm sure that's something that, like, resonates with a lot of people. I think that, when I was younger, I really wanted to, like, be famous and, make money and, like, do all these, have shows that were all across the country and, like, that's what I thought were markers of success, but the truth is, like, having time to be in your studio and not feeling like, you know, um, "Oh, I just have to squeeze in this hour because that's all I have," or, like, "I'm so stressed out that I'm painting, but I'm not really able to, like, mentally be there. I'm not
Mhm,
present." Um, like, real success, I feel like, is having some control over your time and also having, like, your creativity be part of your life and not just feeling like you know, work is your whole life. Making time for yourself to
mhm.
have creativity, I think, is success, and that has definitely changed over time for me, yeah.
What inspires you? Like,
Um,
what gets you to stay creative or
yeah. Um, I think, like, it's a few different things. I think one thing that's always been true for me is I'm really driven by, like, music, and I'm always interested in performing arts too, like
Mm,
dance and theater. I love, to see other people's creativity. I think that's a big inspiration for me, and, like, even as silly as it sounds, like, being on Instagram and having your friends post what they're working on, and you're like, "Oh, that's so exciting." It makes me wanna do stuff too. I think, um, being part of a community, you and I've talked about that, is really important
yeah, yeah,
too, kinda keeps you working.
yeah. Do you ever get, like, stretches of time where you just have, like, a creative block or, like, you're not has that happened to you? How do you
100%.
yeah, deal with that?
I I feel like that's, like, it's such a real thing, and it's something that isn't always talked about, like, um one thing that I think is key is, like, to say, like, "That's okay," and take time off, and, like, even say, like, "I'm not allowed to paint for a week," and just give yourself a real break.
Mhm.
And then another thing is like, I will do small studies. I've always done that. So like, you are working basically it's like playing scales when you're a musician, and maybe you're not writing music, but you're playing your scales and you're like, you know, working your fingers on the guitar, but you're not nothing's coming out. But at least you're like as they call it, like building your chops. So that's what I do. Like so maybe I'm not feeling really creative, so I'm just like cranking out still lifes for a year, you know? But, I think that's really important, and then, like, the other thing so give yourself a break, give yourself time just to work on skills, and then, like, visually feed yourself. So, go to museums or read books about artists that you like or look at art that inspires you, and, like, let that fill your tank for a while, and I think something will come out of that
Mhm.
eventually.
What are your sort of goals for your art personally? Like, are you exhibiting, selling? What? Or is it just something that you do for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I really come to realize, like, how important it is just for my own, like, mental health to, paint regularly and do that, because it's such a core of, like, who I am, but also, so I definitely, like, see it as valid if it were just that. Like, if just me and the painting and I finished them, I rolled them up and put them under my bed, like, that's fine. But, I also, I am showing I just moved to New York, like, maybe 3 years ago, and so I've had a couple of shows in the Hudson Valley, so that's been
Oh,
really
that's not
fun.
right.
Yeah, and then, I'm actually, like, building a little commercey kind of website right now, so my goal is, like, in the beginning of the year to have that as a platform for selling too. I've often had, like, a way to sell smaller paintings,
Mhm.
but I like to have affordable art too. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe, like, since, I'm on a podcast, but you don't know, like, my art, but it's really big and, like, all encompassing, so it's not like something that you necessarily sell, like what I would show. So that's been kinda, like, multifaceted parts of my life.
I recall that you also, like, your toolbox of your trade toolbox, you've done marketing or promotional for artists, right?
Yeah, so, like, yeah, in addition to my other stuff, so basically, like, what happened was when I got out of college and I had the journalism degree, I had learned, like, some PR stuff too, and, um I would have a show, like, in Houston, and, like, all these people would come to the show, and then because I wrote a press release for it and, like, sent it out to the newspaper, and then, um, other artists would come up to me and would say, like, "How did you do that? Can you help me do that?" And so, what ended up happening is that I built a company. I had my own company for a while doing PR for artists, and it ended up being really cool, and I also worked for museums doing that, and small businesses and just, like, kind of creative people. But it was really fun, and again, like, promoting other people's art and kind of arts in general, and even, like, I worked for, like, a melodrama company, and, like, different people were just, a mom's fitness company. I mean, just different people who were kind of doing their own thing, and that was really fun too.
That is, maybe I'm speaking just for myself, but having like that, both the creative writing, but also the journalism background, is so ideal for writing press releases, especially if you actually know the art. For somebody who wants to be able to tap into that, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've heard you, like, address on your podcast before. It's like you're an artist, and then that means that you're kind of a business owner too, because you're running the business of your, Hava's art or whatever. And so, it is, like, something that I think you really do have to compartmentalize and think that way. It's kind of like I would tell people if you're having a show, it's kinda like, if you don't tell people that it's happening, nobody knows that it's happening. And, people also will say, like, "Well, nobody's buying my art. And it's like, well, how do they buy it? Like you have to get it out there somehow. So
Mhm.
I think, like luckily these days, which is, different from when I started out, we were just, trying to get press releases into newspapers and like
Axing them press release.
yeah, exactly. And him like like calling the radio station and seeing if they would do like a PSA for a museum. And nowadays you have social media. So it's like you really have this power to reach a lot of people. Now at the same time, everybody is like over inundated with all
Mhm.
the stuff. So and there's the algorithms and blah blah blah. So you can kind of get lost still. So it's a question of how do you how do you reach out to people? And that's basically what PR is. It's like, how do you reach out to people and get them to know what you're doing? And I think that it's worth thinking about. That would be my advice. Like, definitely take the time to consider, like, how am I reaching my audience? Do they know that I'm showing? Do they know that I'm trying to sell my work? Um, and take the time to like do that well. Whether that means, hiring someone to take a photo of your work, which is something that I kick myself sometimes for not doing, when I had a show. I'm like, why didn't I, hire a
Mhm.
professional photographer? Or, um, getting a public relations person to help you, or, checking a book out from the library that tells you how to do that. Like it just, find a way to take a little extra time to make sure that you're doing it because otherwise people just don't know.
A lot of times there's that misconception of like, if I build, they will come. But no, that's not enough. You have to
Exactly.
lead them. You have to lead them. Um, I'm I'm curious with your background in writing, journalism, PR. I'm curious what your thoughts are on AI.
Yeah, for writing, it's, like I can see it as a very helpful tool for artists who can't write, but it's also like, it basically eliminates the need for like my PR business that I had, for example. It definitely has negatively affected the
Mhm.
newspaper industry. And I'm not like as an artist, I'm not as threatened by it because I don't like I know a lot of artists are really worried about it because they're like, "Look at the paintings it can do," but
Mhm.
I don't see that as the reason why people connect with art, I just
That's a really good point. That's a
yeah, it just
really good
doesn't make
point.
sense to me, like, you wanna connect with the artist and, like, there's this human emotion that you're kind of
Yeah.
interested in, so I don't really see it as a threat in that way. I don't think people are gonna buy, like, AI painting. I mean, I could be totally wrong like this, but I do, like, see it as a important tool in the science, perspective, like, my niece is going to grad school right now in a more medical kind of research field, and, like, she's using it to run all these lab samples to try to, like, find cures for epilepsy. Like, I just think that it's gonna
Yeah.
have this much wider, um role. And I think it's something that's still to be realized. I don't think it's something that we need to do everything for us, kind of the way it's being pushed. Like it doesn't need to do all of our Google searches, but like, great if it could be used for like a greater purpose.
Yeah. I really like that point you made because, for me, I do see it as a tool primarily, to help me with things that I'm not very good at. Like my emails have gotten so professional now because like I'll write what I need to say and then I will ask ChatGPT to make it polite and professional. That really helps. And it does help me like polish my artist statement. And I'm typically like really blown away with how how that comes together. I even like mentioned it to ChatGPT, like, how are you doing that? Like, it just really sounds like there's like some consciousness behind here. You assured me that there is no awareness there. They're really good at creating meaning through language.
Right. It's the language model, right?
So,
I think what's really interesting about it, it's kind of you and I went to this AI
oh
museum
my gosh, yes.
together. Yeah, and I like that really got me thinking about it in an interesting way. Like I am interested in it as a tool.
Yeah.
that museum was questioning,
Yeah.
what is it drawing from? And
Yeah. For me personally, it's not replacing humanity. If anything, it brings out my own humanity. And that's, it's a mirror. It like reflects back what you put in there. It reflects your tone. It's very good at predicting what you want to in what you're doing. And um so it's, for me personally, I find it a benevolent and very, very useful tool. Though I do see how it's putting a whole industry or several industries out of business. Um,
I think it's gonna put several industries out of
yeah,
business, and I think that the writers are the first people who have kind of sounded the alarm, like, that's
yeah,
what was happening with the SAG strike.
yeah,
It's interesting, and I think that it's like you said, I think if people understand that that's a tool that is
mhm,
reflecting them, that's kind of the key. It's like you could do there's a writing trick where you just take a tape recorder and, like, record your thoughts and then listen to them and then use that to
yeah,
inform your artist statement or whatever, and that's essentially what you're doing. It's just
mhm,
kind of helping you see the
yeah,
connections, but, I mean, I really do believe that that's kind of why we look at art, is to find it's just why we listen to music. It's like, "Oh, somebody else feels what I feel," or, "I never thought of that," or whatever. We're looking for a connection to somebody. And understand a human understanding.
yeah. I like
Which
that. If somebody wanted to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, lindsaypeytonart.com. I think that's it, yeah. And then, lpgallery.art.
Yes, when we will put those in the notes.
Yeah.
Are you on social media?
Yes, and I'm on social media. I think it's Lindsay Peyton Art as well.
Do you have any exhibitions coming up or anything that's
I'm currently up at the Woodstock
Oh,
Art Alliance and Museum, and I just had a show at the Jane Street Art Center in Socrates, which is a really cool, woman-owned gallery. Um, so
yeah, that's
fingers crossed for good things in the future, yeah.
absolutely. Um, Thank you so much for this
Thank you.
conversation and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Hava.
Thanks. Thanks again for tuning in. That's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please help us out by leaving a review, a comment, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. Every little bit helps, and I really appreciate it. And before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor and producer, Art Storefronts. If you've been thinking about turning your art into a real business or just want to level up your online presence, now is honestly the best time, especially with the holiday selling season coming up in Q4. I can't stress this enough. Art Storefronts isn't just a website builder. They're a full-blown partner for your art business. They give you the tools, education, and marketing support to actually make sales, not just sit online and hope. And if you're unsure whether your art will sell, no worries. Just head to artstorefronts.com and sign up for a demo. They'll give you a free art review and a marketing assessment of your art to show you exactly what's possible. So go to artstorefronts.com, tell them Hava sent you, and I'll catch you on the next episode.